What is
And
going
we're
on?
live.
Woo!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Two Alex.
I think we're all like spent, man. It was just
Yeah.
a great week here with Power BI 5, and
Oh,
you can kind
yeah.
of see it with the guy in the Cube channel too. It was a little quiet to get started, and everyone was like, "Oh, like
Yeah.
just coming down, man." Uh, I
Yeah.
loved it though. This was such a fun week to just like look back and kind of hear everyone's stories too. Just I wasn't a traditional BI developer. I'm an Excel guy at heart who
Yeah.
kind of came along for this journey. And I know you and me have talked about this too. Like, you're not a traditional DBA in this path either.
No, I was talking to Trey about this on Twitter. I started as a chemist, but I do remember right as I transitioned from being a chemist to like doing chemistry IT, which apparently is a thing. And we had just got Office 365, which before that we were using like Excel 2005 or 2007.
Oh, 2007,
And,
yeah.
and I think we were even reusing keys, and it was like old enough that you could do that, and that was a big part of why we were doing it. But we got Office 365, and that was like right when Power BI first came out, and so I was like poking around in all the Office 365 stuff to see like what did we buy, and then there was all this like all of a sudden I was like, hey, try Power BI, and you know,
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, like I was like tethered to Excel, kind of the Office 2010, so it was still like the Power Query add-on days.
yeah,
And because it was an add-on, like whenever they did a new release, like I had to go track down our Office 365 admin or Office admin. Like, hey, can you please update this? And then it was all the red tape to get an update. So I think at one point we were running Power Query maybe like 10 months behind.
Yeah, I mean, even when we got Office 365, we didn't have it for everybody. We just had it for the professional, like white collar staff who sat at computers. The lab staff and all of the like workstations were still using the old versions of Office. So I was trying to do like Visual Basic development, and every once in a while I'd write some code and it just wouldn't work in the old version of Excel. And trying to figure out why was the worst thing. And then I'd be like, oh, we could use Power Query to solve this problem. It's like, no, we can't use Power Query. You have to write that out in Visual Basic.
I mean, that was a problem that I had too, is any solution that I built, it had to work for 18,000 people. So I had to build everything as vanilla as possible in terms of the solution there. And that's awesome. Though hopefully everyone enjoyed kind of hearing at least a little bit about our story. Like, we're not traditional BI kind of background or developers, but that's what I love reading about Power BI 5 too, is it seemed like a lot of people who took the journey with Power BI are like, this thing kind of changed the trajectory of my career, my life, just being able to work with databases, work with BI. These were things that were never unlocked to me in the past. So just love hearing those stories.
Yeah, totally. So we've been talking for a little bit. Can we just get someone in the chat to let us know how, if we've solved our sound demons? I think we have, but...
Yeah, Chewy gave us some warning here. He didn't yell at us yet about the sound, so I'll take it as positive.
Yeah, hopefully. I've got... So this week, we want to talk about source control, and we're really excited. I'm really excited anyway, about how external tools changes some of the negatives of the source control story from before.
Yep. Sounds like a little echo, so maybe we'll see if we can get that just corrected here. But we'll kind of we'll rely on everyone to give us the thumbs up whenever we're looking good. Morning, Kevin. Morning, Michael. Chewy, Donald, Winston, Joe. Man, we got a lot of people here just firing off. Let us know if the sound is kind of back. But we started the show really talking about external tools and how we think that the Power BI desktop, just for the true developers, man, like you're gonna hit that pain point.
Yeah.
We did.
When you want to go to the next level. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I mean, July desktop, whenever that landed, like we're there. We were finally there. Oh. Good morning, Erica and Benny.
Yeah. Welcome. So we started out talking about what it takes to go to the next level. And now with external tools, we've got some really cool new options. So, do you want to just jump in and talk about maybe the story before external tools and maybe some SharePoint stuff? So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my screen, and we'll take a look. So first thing, really quickly, I don't know how many people have used SharePoint to do source control. it can be very straightforward, but the most important feature to know about is in SharePoint or in Teams, there's this button called Sync. If you don't know about that button, it's going to change your world because it makes the user experience of using SharePoint libraries 1,000 times better. So when you press this button, OneDrive is going to fire off, and the folder or library will be synced to your Explorer so that you can use traditional Windows save commands to upload to SharePoint. So you don't have to like save the file and then upload the file and save it back. So I don't know who all has or hasn't seen that, but like you really can't do Power BI development without it. So now that I have this here, I have all of these files that are saved in SharePoint, and every time I just open them in desktop and save them, and they all work great. And if I go to this in SharePoint now, let me, I've got some crazy power toys going on here. Let me see if I can remember how to get out of this. Well, yeah, I'm gonna throw it over to you, and while I figure out why my screen is frozen. So you need to share your screen, or it's not gonna show up. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh man.
Let's try that.
Back up again.
All right, let's give me a thumbs up. Hello, check. Yeah. Thumbs up. Anyone? There we go. Thanks, Chewy. All right, so kind of jumping back into just kind of Power BI desktop. I don't ever press the publish button at all. For me, it's more about this low to no code experience of like, if I can just do kind of like a DevOps experience right now with what I have available to me, and that is going to be OneDrive or SharePoint Online syncing. And the big one that I want to call out here is just syncs within about an hour. So anytime that I press File Save on my file, if I made any adjustments, it's going to go ahead and create those syncs for me between OneDrive or SharePoint. Yeah. The reason why I love this is because I now have like a version history. If I right click on my file on OneDrive, I can say, oh, what were the last changes? I can roll it back if I needed to. Obviously if it's SharePoint, I can do the same kind of setting even a larger version history tolerance over there. Mm-hmm. So that is how I approach it, at least for right now, especially, if I don't have premium capacity, if I don't have the full deployment pipeline story, this right now is your native functionality for DevOps.
Yeah. So an important point there is if you look at that second paragraph, it's talking about how you should do a one-time refresh, and that's because the sync includes the data in your model. So if it's not up to date, you might have an experience gap for your users. What we did in this project that I was starting to share, and now I have control over my screen again, is we had a dev folder and a production folder. So I would work on the models in the dev folder, and then when we were ready to go to production, we'd hit F12 to save as into the production folder. And then we weren't using OneDrive syncing, we were just hitting publish. But that way we'd always know what was in production, and separately we would know where to go to make changes, and that way you didn't have to finish what you were doing in a single session. And then just to demonstrate the version history, like if we wanted to take and, not that button, come here and look at version history, you can come in and you can see we've got a history of 70 versions. Now, it doesn't keep the full history. There's definitely versions that have been dropped. It goes back a year, but we've worked on this a lot. I know we've made more than 70 versions, but over time it goes back and drops things out. But so it's not as good as a traditional source control, but this is still a pretty robust approach, and it works for very large files. If you've tried to use GitHub or as a DevOps, you've maybe seen that it can be challenging with large files, but this works really well.
I mean, this helps us in terms of like the toolbox, right? Because if I was in a closed environment and I didn't have access to DevOps, didn't have access to GitHub, but you know, my administrators did give me an Office 365 license.
Yeah.
Right here. I mean, problem solved. Don't overcomplicate it if you don't need to, but definitely at least take advantage of the native functionality.
Yeah. So the other thing, though, the downside to this, and this is where we're going to switch into talking about external tools, is that I can't tell what was changed in each version, right? If I want to do some rollbacks or figure out what might be causing a bug, or just know, like, hey, did my coworker make that change he said he was going to make, or like, are we still waiting on it? You have to download the PBIX and then, you know, explore. Like, it's a whole nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, you can do some like checkout and comments on the SharePoint, but
but that
9 times out of 10, someone's not going to do that.
Right, and that gets away from the seamless experience, because now, like, you can't come into this folder and like check it out seamlessly. Like, you're like bouncing back and forth again. Like, you have to come in here and then come in to check out, and like that's
it's a nightmare.
Yeah, and then yeah, it's not something you can remember to do. So let's switch over to using we're going to use GitHub, but Azure DevOps works just fine. So I'm going to come to, we've got a repository in GitHub all set up, and it's got a very simple PBIX in it. We already set this up last night, but basically you just create a repository in your source control, and then you know, when we wanted to sync this to in VS Code, it's as simple as let me see if I can replicate this. Nope. God, I can never remember how the source control stuff works.
Is there a button on your left-hand side, one of the GitHub?
No. Anyway, that's sort of a side tangent. Anyway, but it's very easy, even though I can't demo it, to add a source control repository into VS Code or into GitHub Desktop. And from here, I've got my PBIX. And what I've done is I've used Tabular Editor to open the file, and I haven't done anything with Tabular Editor except done save to folder, and I've made this folder inside of that same repository. So if we flip back over to here, you'll see I have this Tabular Editor source control folder, and what's in that folder, if we sort of drill in, is there is a separate JSON file for each object in the model. So now I can go about my business doing work here in desktop. So say I want to come in to this data, and somehow I managed to hide my column headers. That's weird.
Yeah, you had that yesterday too.
I don't know what that's about. But let's see, I want to just do a filter to red, right? Hit apply. I'm going to save this. I'm going to reopen Tabular Editor. All I'm going to do is do another save, select the same folder, close, and now when I come in here to make changes, I'm going to see a line item for each change that I made. So now when I check this in, I'll be able to see that I made a change to, now there's some additional changes. It looks like I didn't quite have fully synced up, but we'll be able to see each thing that was changed. And so if I go ahead and commit all of this here, now when I come up here, oh, I need to do one more thing, which is push to GitHub. Now when I come up here and look at the history, I can see this commit that I did. And if I look at the commit, I can come in and see each change that was made, because there's a object just for everything that was in the model. That's all there is to it. There's no special, like, oh, I had to learn to use a new tool. All I have to do is every time I want to make an update, do 2 extra button clicks to save another copy of the model in this format. And now I have like real source control. Now,
yeah, I think we were looking at some of the tabular editor settings too. So the save to folder kind of spits out the TOM, right? The tabular object model hierarchy. There is another format too, though, right? Where you can actually spit out just the BIM kind of in a zip format.
So let me kind of open that demo back up. So the model.bim is just one JSON that contains all the objects. So the folder format just explodes out each column, measure, table, relationship, anything into a separate file. And that way when you check in, you can see what each thing that changes. If you're just using the model.bim, so let's go ahead and make another change here, and this time we'll do let me start by saving a model.bim and committing that, so then we can get a diff off of that. So go ahead and, no, not to the DB. We're going to save as the model.bim here, do this. Okay, I've did this. BIM, check. Great. And push. Okay, so now if I come back here, and let's add a new measure. Say we don't want a summer effect, we want to average our fact. So average our fact, right? Okay, great. Save this. External tools. I'm used to it being at the end. Go ahead and we're just going to hit another save as, overwrite that model.bim, and now when we come into VS Code and we look at our changes, you'll see that I don't have a list of each of the files that I changed. I just have a highlighted block of one very large file. And so if you have lots of changes, it can be hard to sort of know the summary. So like now that I'm not making a ton of changes, if I go in and now let's do the folder save and do the same thing here, now you can see within the folder save we have 2 line items. So one is we've added some tabular editor metadata that wasn't there before, and 2, the GUID has changed. Okay, that doesn't really matter. And 3, we have a change to this single line for the average function. So that can be nice. Now the downside to this folder format is really only Tabular Editor can work with it. If you wanted to work with the model.bim, like you could open that up directly in ALM Toolkit or Visual Studio, or like any sort of tabular model tool can work with the model.bim. So the table format you can really only use with Tabular Editor. So now I have heard that Christian is at least considering adding the serialized folder support to ALM Toolkit. Okay, I'm going to take a second. Take a breath. Alex, have you seen any questions in the chat before we go on?
People are loving kind of the timeliness here, especially with the DevOps kind of approach. I think one of the things that we at least saw was the setting within Tabular Editor. If you can go back to that for us, it saves the model.bim file, but it saves it in like a zipped format. I I think we would love to just have that kind of outputted, kind of not in that binary.
Yeah.
So maybe that's like an idea that we can all kind of yell at Daniel over on Twitter about. Is like, hey, can we get like the model.bim exported with kind of the timestamp or the GUID value? Yeah. So if we were to go back and maybe look at that folder.
Yeah.
Kind of show everyone a good example here. Yeah. But if we were to truly get like a DevOps, you know, we could script a lot of this like unpackaging through like PowerShell.
Yeah.
It's just kind of just another layer that we would be adding.
Yeah, and the other thing is that, yes, this is a zip file, but like GitHub can't even parse traditional zip files. That
well, go to Tabular Editor for me.
Yeah.
And then that file preferences where we can kind of show everyone.
Yeah, so we can do a save a backup here, and if I select this folder.
And then do you have zoom it where we can zoom in on that?
Yeah. If I can remember the shortcuts. No, it's Control-4 for live zoom. So if you come into the preferences, there's this save model.bim backup, and then you select your folder. Now, it's a global
setting.
Then
hover above that for us so we can get the description, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Sorry, where did you want me to go?
Yep, hover above that saved model BIM backup.
Yeah. Let's see if I can get it to pop up. There we go. Yeah. So, it comes out as a compressed zip. And the other thing is that this is a setting that's global. So if you're working on multiple models, all of your backups will go into the same place. That may not be like, that's not really a source control story.
But like thinking about you, like you primarily work on one model.
That's true, totally. And so
like this would be perfect for you.
If this was just coming out as not in the zip file, that would work really well. So I think if we go to our folder now, no, I need to make a change. So let me come in here to my sum.
So I'll kind of rewind that here for everyone. So every time that he makes a change and presses save to save that back to the model, it's going to automatically create kind of this zip backup.
Yeah. So if I come in here and I'm just going to change the format string here of this measure to currency, and I'm going to save this. And now when we come to our folder, you can see we have this backup here with a version of the model.bim that automatically happens. But
I love that too. Just every time you press save, it creates that.
Right. The downside is that GitHub Visual Studio can't parse this. And so like you'd have to extract it out of the zip file in order for it to fill into this source control story we were just talking about.
We should just buy the domain address ideas.tabulareditor.com.
You know, I think one time I tweeted at Matthew Roach, I'm trying to go to ideas.ssbipolar.com, but it's not working. And then I just put my suggestion in the tweet. And he found that amusing at least once. So I don't know if Daniel will have the same opinion. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about, we talked about how, like, if you're just working on main and not actually doing feature branches, this can work really well. When it comes to working in feature branches, and so this is a common like development technique where you have like, you know, like your list of features, and then you go to the feature in like your board, and you create a branch for the feature, and then you do your work, and then you merge it back in when you're done. Alex and I tried this out yesterday, and we ran into a bit of a problem. I'm just going to open up GitHub Desktop to show what the problem is. So in theory, if you have two PBIXs that are not synced, you should be able to use ALM toolkit to merge them together. And we'll take a look at that in a second. But if I go to my pull requests here, I've got come on, show me the pull request. Okay, well, it doesn't want to. I'll go up to the web and show there. We get the same. It says like, oh, if you go to GitHub Desktop, it might go better. doesn't like the idea of using some tool other than a text merge to join together the things. So like if I could get like a button or a download to say like download both the files and then you could use ALM toolkit to smash them together, that would work, and then you could like resolve the merge. But the problem is like there's no option to like just use this one or something to do like a merge here. And so you probably don't want to do like that. Doesn't mean you can't do multi-developers, but like doing branching and merging is hard. Yeah, and Adam's right. If you wanted to do like some sort of like you can use ALM Toolkit has command line options, and so you can use GitHub Actions to automatically fire off these types of merges. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. So like we still don't have a perfect story, but it's already like way better than the SharePoint story. So yeah.
And this is kind of the next layer though, right? Like,
yeah.
We're starting to see the pieces kind of come together.
Mm-hmm.
So ALM Toolkit, kind of at least right now, you might have to kind of like do these multiple file, maybe some little manual effort there, unless you're going to fully kind of get into customize. I love that Adam is like, I just love GitHub. Yeah. I think we all do. We would love to see it just kind of more baked in with kind of the Power BI, either natively or hopefully kind of some of these experts out in the community, just really kind of integrating the full story.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about ALM Toolkit and how it fits in here. And then, so you can, I'm using an XMLI endpoint just so I have two models, and that was what was easy. But now that you can commit to a PBIX file with ALM Toolkit, and this comparison is going to take a while, you can use it if you have two developers that are working on the same PBIX. You can merge them together. Now, you want to be careful as to which one you use as your target, since only certain types of changes are supported, and you don't want to run into the situation Patrick did, which is to say it might work, but if it doesn't, no one's going to help you. So
I think that was a good topic here recently too. Is just like if you do something that's completely out of left field of the Power BI desktop file, you're on your own. Microsoft is not going to jump in.
Right. Now, fortunately, now you're using source control, and hopefully you've got nice backups of the versions. But that does mean that you need to remember to commit often, even if you're not making changes. So.
And Micah had a great question here that luckily some others jumped in on. Does Power Query, kind of legacy query, get captured with the source control?
Yeah.
So I mean, it is part of kind of the underlying model.bim in terms of like the data sets and the TOM.
Yeah, exactly. So
there's not a good story right now though in terms of like editing though, right? Or kind of merging those.
Yeah, so when we did that first commit where I came into the query editor, we don't need a refresh, and filtered to red. Here, oh, my headers are back. Okay. So I'm just going to take that filter off and apply it, and we're going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to come here. Let's see, is there a refresh metadata option somewhere? I feel like there should be. I don't know. I'll just reopen it. If I now do the save to folder again, you will see that in my table, the Power Query script is here, and you do see exactly the line that's changed. And if you... So you can absolutely do this. Now, what's not supported is like what Donald's talking about, which is I can come in here, and if I want to edit the M code to this table, not that one, this one, I can come into the partitions and I'll see the M script right here, and I could, type away. But now you're in super unsupported territory, and it's almost certainly not going to work. But like if you wanted to work in Visual Studio, like Donald suggested, or Visual Studio Code, and then paste your code back into the advanced editor here, that'd work great. But if you make changes to a partition makeup when you're hitting save, you're really tempting fate that you're going to explode your model.
I love that. Do you want to throw it over to my screen then?
Yeah,
maybe while we're talking about Power Query?
Yeah.
Especially just kind of this multi-developer. Just obviously everyone knows that I'm the weird M guy. And then everyone, if you can give us a thumbs up, just let us know if you can hear me talking.
Yeah. Yes.
Kind of wait a moment here. Awesome. So let's kind of jump over to at least things that us Power Query developers are really excited about. At the very least, if you haven't downloaded the Power Query M language, kind of official extension for VS Code, please go out and do so. It's just fantastic. There's IntelliSense, just a lot of things that were really heavy on the Visual Studio story, ported over now, and hopefully we'll just kind of see this one continue to grow, but I would love to see this kind of crack 1,000. The reason why I bring this up, kind of with the VS Data Mashup Explorer, for anyone that is following kind of Ben and his blog for Power Query, fantastic guy. Just he does so much for the community, but he built his own PowerShell commandlet modules. I would come out here and download these and install them, just if you haven't already done so, kind of installing. The reason why, especially as we talk about kind of this whole, multi-developer, comparing M code between files. So he's got a module where if you are doing kind of Power Query or multi-developer, you can go ahead and compare, and it will show you the differences here, just using some of his functions. And a good one here that I'm going to kind of show, editing report spreadsheets, mashups in VS Code. So one of his newer ones that he just released, kind of with his VS Code extension, you can go ahead and edit kind of a PBIX or an Excel file using just PowerShell. Just come out here, copy it. I'll create like a video series just to kind of show you how I got up and running. I'm going to go over to PowerShell here now. I'm going to go ahead and just run his module commandlet. So I'm going to say, let's edit kind of this mashup .xlsx. I'm going to run that. Pops up VS Code. If you aren't aware of Power Query, it does store all of the tables and things that are called sections. So in this example, I've got a table that's called a list. Obviously, it's just a list. Colors, which I've just got a couple colors. And let's create another table here. So I'm going to kind of dial back. Let's call this, I don't know, numbers equals. And then obviously our let statements. Kind of, we'll call it source again. Obviously, just an identifier, no reserved word. And let's do 1 through, let's do, create another list here. And then we'll do in, get out of here until it sends. And let's do source and close it out with our semicolon here at the end. I'm going to press save.
So Alex, you don't use informatics?
No, not at all. So let's go ahead and save this now and close. I added this new kind of table. It's actually just me a list over on Excel side. So if I close this, I see here I'm good. If I jump over here now, and hopefully we will see this up and running. Oh, that didn't look right. That didn't look right.
I see a list that goes from 1 to something.
Yeah, but I don't think it added this new one. No, it didn't. What is going on, Ben? Yeah. Of course, now it's erroring out. But earlier today, obviously, live demos are always the fun part. Mm-hmm. It'll create kind of this diagnostic over here. And maybe I just got to close out of VS Code. But it'll create like this diagnostic kind of port reading. And then at the very end, it'll check for updates, and it'll write those back to the source file. So if you are doing just kind of Power Query M developments, go ahead and do so, just kind of using the new VS Code extension. But this is really for the people that don't need the GUI, which I would still say use the GUI as far as you can and then jump over to VS Code.
Yeah,
I would love to see an M evaluator over there kind of over time.
I need the GUI. I need the GUI. Give me some columns from examples. That's what I need. Uh, don't even want to do a if statement. Just type in those examples.
Yeah. Well, I think for right now, it's just like one of these kind of like stories. Like we're getting closer.
Yeah.
To really solving kind of the Power Query side of the kind of development.
Yeah, totally.
I'll add that. Yeah, of course. Just tons of errors. All right, we'll ignore it. I'll create a video series around it. But
yeah,
the fact that people from the Power Query side are starting to look at, hey, how can we meld the story with kind of the rich tools that exist with like ALM toolkit, Tabular Editor. I think this is going to be a space that we should all be watching out for.
Yeah. So since we've been talking a little bit about DevOps, do you want to spend the next 20-ish minutes talking about CI/CD stuff?
Oh, gosh, man.
Or do you want to avoid that topic entirely?
No. We'll throw it to the chat. What's everyone thinking? Yeah, I'll go and drop this post in here just for the group, and we'll have it in the follow-up descriptions here as well, just within the video.
And the other thing, someone just posted if they could get the link to Ben's post.
Yep.
And Ben's blog has the most information of any Power BI adjacent blog, perhaps even more than SQL BI, where he has a 20-part series that actually explains how M works, and it's amazing. Yeah.
So a great question that kind of came in. Is there any advantage to doing your M code in VSC versus Advanced Editor? Yes. And the reason for that, let me jump back over here. Get -help, data mashup. So he's got these things called import and export. So you could export over your scripts. You can loop through folders. You can extract every Power Query M script that you have in those, whether it be through Excel or Power BI. And then obviously with this whole new edit mashup that he has, imagine that you had like a lot of your dimension tables that you commonly use. You know, obviously it could be a data flow that you're kind of copying that M script, but you could automate those deployments to all of your files. So you could deploy, let's say, 20 tables all at once, kind of using this edit data mashup.
Yeah.
So that's where it's like, yes.
Yeah. So Adam pointed out we should probably say CI/CD is continuous integration and continuous deployment. So that's a topic that we're considering discussing for the next bit. We also had a very important question in chat, which is what is the correct pronunciation of just those two words, apparently, but of the Power BI file format? Is it PBIX? Is it PBIX? Is it PBEX? Where do you land on this?
I mean, PBIX.
PBIX. Yeah.
I'm sure it's PBIX, but
yeah,
if someone knows, I'm sure it's a Power BI extensible file format.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to use Excel as an example.
Yes. Well, when you get frustrated, you might be tempted to call it PBRIX.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
Okay, so
if we were to kind of look at least what's available now with kind of the CI/CD, because we looked at like the load or no code, right?
Yeah, and yeah, that OneDrive option is absolutely continuous deployment, 100%. Yep. The only downside is if you have to keep your data up to date, which if your data takes a long time to refresh, can be unfun. Having someone who's done this with a 2-hour refresh model, it is super unfun to have to lock your computer up for 2 hours before you can deploy to change a measure.
So deployment pipelines, let's kind of move on to the next Power BI story at least, right? So from the low to no code, kind of with just the OneDrive sync here, now with more of like a native functionality. If you haven't read this article, Understanding the Deployment Process, I would recommend it. It gives you everything that you should be doing today. It talks about deploying a data set with a blank page. That way you can kind of do shared or certified data sets, just all the best practices that you should be considering.
Yeah.
I'm not quite there in terms of like fully in love with it. And the reason why are right down here. Can't do incremental refresh.
Yeah. which when you're getting to a point where you want to do robust development practices, you probably care a lot about making the refreshes faster and making your development copies smaller. And incremental refresh is a big part of that.
Yeah.
The model
obviously it is something on the roadmap, so they will get there. It's just something that I would not fully advocate today if you're doing a kind of a large scale deployment. Yeah,
the roadmap says that in like early 2021 they'll have this. So
yeah, I think everyone's agreeing here too. It's something that they would love to see. Just right now, it's just not quite where they would like to kind of have it. But I mean, ideally, this lowers the total cost of ownership of having to do kind of a full-blown GitHub or, kind of building your own DevOps kind of
And the other big limitation here is that this is like not just a little bit premium only. This is really premium only. All those workspaces have to be in premium, and so which isn't to say you can't like have your dev workspace be on an A SKU that you shut down when you're not using it, or even all of your workspaces, right? The XMLA write endpoints and deployment pipelines, they only need to be on premium when you're actually making changes. Once you've made the changes, they'll continue to work in a shared workspace. And so you can, if you want to get crazy, screwing around. Oh, Adam says that the prod has to be a P SKU.
I just learned about that yesterday.
I'm going to have to... I guess we're special because in MSIT it's impossible to get a P SKU, so we use A SKUs for everything. So I just assume everything will work on an A SKU, but sometimes they have to turn some knobs to make that work for us.
Yeah. I'm trying to find a... Go ahead and shoot over your screen. I'm going to find an article here real quick, at least around... There's a kind of a community-built DevOps kind of connectors for Power BI. Mm-hmm. Now, I was in a really great session kind of with the... I don't want to like say Canadian. I'm trying to think of what their name is up in the Pacific Northwest with Yana and everyone. But they had a awesome session by, I want to say Luca, where he was doing the full DevOps experience with PowerShell and deploying to multiple environments. Vancouver. Yeah, his session was really good. That is like the pro side of the fence.
So the other thing that fits in the CID, like the way to go full bore, is both Tabular Editor and ALM toolkit have command line parameters and can be invoked as part of a GitHub action or deployment pipeline. And so you can set, or Azure DevOps pipeline. And so you can set up either tool to every time you commit to automatically run one or more Tabular Editor commands to do a test deployment or do a deployment to prod. Maybe there's a cool video on Power BI Tips where Daniel shows how you can have Tabular Editor automatically run the best practices analyzer and give you the results. And if it fails the best practice rules you have, fail the build. And if it passes, go ahead and deploy that to production. So you can really go hard into setting up Azure DevOps or GitHub to continuously deploy, assuming that your target is in premium, right? Because all of these rely on the XMLA write. And the other nice thing there is that
not for the build tools here. You can do all this through a pro environment because a lot of it's just using the PowerShell commandlets, which is just like exporting or moving data sets from one workspace to another.
Right. But again, here you need to have fully refreshed models. If you want to do a metadata only deployment, you need that XMLA endpoint. Which if you're going to all the work to set up command line triggers on your, I gotta imagine your model's fairly sizable.
I know who was it? Kind of Yoast for Power BI Quiz. He did a really good kind of article just talking about, hey, if you want the XML endpoint, you can spin up some ASQs and kind of turn them on and turn them off in terms of development.
That's true.
I mean, there's little hacks kind of here and there, but yeah, the XML is definitely kind of one of the most important if it's just metadata driven.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other nice thing about XMLA write is that even though we talked about how in desktop only certain changes are supported, pretty much everything is supported over XMLA, right? You can go ahead and add tables, the only thing that doesn't sync over is properties that aren't in the model.bim. So if you are editing, like if you're doing Q&A settings, those aren't going to get synced over, and like linguistic schema stuff. One of the things I've noticed doesn't seem to sync over is data categorizations. I got to double check on that, but there are some properties in here that not going to sync over if you want to add visuals. So one of the things we really like to do on our shared model is on the main page, add a row level security test visual, because you can't invoke the person impersonator on a live connected report. You have to do it on the main report. So we always have like a little like RLS test here on the landing page of our shared model. And if you decide after the fact you want to edit that, you can't do that using the XMLA endpoint. So
yeah, it feels like at least the canvas level of kind of the reporting.
Yeah.
Not a good story.
No.
I don't think we have a good CI/CD story for that.
No.
Which, a lot of, I love the Power Query side. You love kind of the Tabular side. Yeah, I don't know. I think at least for right now, the deployment pipelines is really kind of the best story for if it's just a canvas. Because they have a really awesome, hey, here are things that have changed. Do you want to go ahead and deploy those?
Yeah. Yeah, deployment pipelines definitely have the best story there. And being able to change parameters, so you can say, hey, in dev, I just want to have 10 rows in all my tables, so it's as small as possible. And then in test, I want you to go to a couple months on all my tables, so I can actually test my measures, but my model's not huge. And then when you go to prod, that's when I want you to refresh to the full model. Like, you can really only do that with deployment pipelines. So, yeah.
Man. So I think what time did we start?
We started at 8:45. So we've got 15 minutes.
Time?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Now I was wondering, I was like, everyone's kind of blasting us here on a bunch of stuff, so I want to make sure we had enough time to wrap it up here. So Mike had a great idea. Yes, RLS test page for deployed data sets.
Yeah.
I would love to kind of see that. I'm actually kind of surprised. Like, I'm having a lot more conversations around people just not knowing about parameters within like Power Query, which is kind of like interesting to me. It's like, oh, like, well, how are you doing kind of this incremental testing now? And they're like, I don't know, we just refresh the data and we see that it doesn't work and it's bad. So then we go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, hold on. Like, you should like incrementally add, start out with, maybe, I don't know, 10,000 rows in your data set, increase to 100,000, increase to 10 million, whatever it may be, kind of the exponential stuff. Parameter situation confuses so many people. It does. I would agree with Adam, because a lot of people were still like, well, I want parameters, but I want them on my report page. And it's like, well, hold on. I think we're confusing the word parameter with what you're actually trying to get to. And then I see also just a lot of people that are like, well, I want to do like an export to Excel kind of like parameter-based thing. It's like, well, why don't you just use Excel? Same underlying technology. So
yeah,
it always pains me whenever people try and shoehorn a solution into Power BI when really, if it was just an Excel-based solution, just data refresh, get data.
Yeah. So what we really like to do in our models is add a step. Let's see. Yeah, this is not going to be sensitive. It's very close to sensitive, but this actual thing isn't. So in our model, we like to add this step here. So I have one parameter that governs this used in lots of tables. And in every table, they have this step here, which says if this parameter is 0, invoke the previous step and just load the whole table. Otherwise, do a top n to that parameter. So if I scroll down, and let me do a zoom here, because that's going to be way too small for you. Okay, so we like to do this, where we have a step that says this is a parameter, And then if it's 0, we go ahead and do an incremental, like we go ahead and invoke the previous step. Otherwise, we do this top end here. And if we scroll down in dev, I have this parameter set to 10. And then if I come back out and let me just pull this up on my second screen for a second, get to the right page. In the service, I think this has been added somewhat recently. I think it was probably part of the deployment pipeline development, but it's not part of deployment pipelines. You can edit these parameters. So in the service, we switch this back over to 0. And so that's how our tables get really big. And then when we use ALM toolkit to deploy, we just have this line as an ignore rule. And so that works really well for us. And hopefully that is a good way to use parameters and makes a little bit of sense. Yeah. So.
Alex, get my screen back up. I'm gonna redeem myself here on this.
Yeah, you solved it.
PowerShell. Yep, I figured out what it was. So just kind of loading the function back up. Edit data mashup, mashup.xlsx. I now see that it's listening to the ports. It's kind of doing all the fun stuff here for us.
Yeah.
Going to show again here once again live. The live demo, man. Shared stuff equals, I'll just do kind of I'll do source equals cats for David Eldersveld, my good friend here. And then we'll do source. We'll save it, close it, open up our Excel mashup. I'm gonna laugh if it doesn't work again. I just had it running. Stuff, there it is. So if I was to run over to kind of Power Query over here, we'll see that I now have cats in a string of text. Awesome, redeem myself. Woo!
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I'm starting to see the pieces come together. At least other things that I'm seeing as well is there might be a lot of opportunity to like take existing kind of models, or even if it is like other kind of BI tool vendors, etc. There might be opportunity to like script a lot of this if you were doing any type of like migration efforts, which is scary to think about, like the amount of potential that is coming here very soon. I think people are starting to put the pieces together, especially when we think about like, well, how do I do the mashup portion? Well, maybe I could use Ben tools. Well, how do I do kind of the, the more tabular side? Well, maybe I could use the Tabular Editor. It's really just that last mile of like the visualizations that we don't really have like a really good scripting story with. But it's gonna be pretty wild whenever these things all come together.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think, let's see. Let's take a look at the questions from the chat here and maybe move towards wrapping up.
We're getting some DataFlex comments.
That was me, yes. Someone made a comment about how we should stop changing names all the time, and no, that just wouldn't be us. And I really enjoyed the announcement of DataFlex. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that.
I'll give it no comment.
Yeah. And if you read all the DataFlex announcements, you'll see quotes from Chris Wagner in about 6 of them. Pretty much just that was the whole blog post.
Question here: how to handle spaces in the parameter when user input is dynamic and not chosen? I mean, a lot of that you're just gonna have to jump into the Power Query, and kind of build out that logic, kind of the if this then that.
Right. So what we did on our parameter, that's why I did that if 0 else other, is that we just do an integer parameter, and so it doesn't. I guess it's actually a decimal. There's no integer parameters, but it doesn't accept words at all, so no spaces.
Yeah. Maybe we'll just have to kind of jump into kind of the parameter-based kind of an incremental build here on the stream. I think that would be a really fun one. Oh, everyone's now starting to get caught up on Dataflex. Oh.
That's right. Chris Wagner is going to stop being a Power BI guy and start being a Power Apps guy, based on what I've heard from him. So.
Oh man, that's funny. Well, let's kind of wrap up here today. Just thanks everyone for kind of hanging out here. We're going to really start piecing these things together. We really wanted to kind of revisit kind of our very first video of like, hey, now that we're kind of moving beyond the desktop, here's some of the other tools. I think what me and Alex would like to do is just like a live build, kind of where you can see our mental processes, our brains just kind of moving here. And then just all the different ways that we're thinking about like scripting things out. I think it would be a blast though. Kind of everyone to see the moving pictures.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. And I hope that the DevOps story makes a little more sense and you've got a better grasp on some of the options. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. So, yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.